There is a strange season in life when the past, once warm and familiar, begins to loosen around you like a coat that no longer fits the shape you've grown into. I remember sensing it long before I had the language for it, this quiet dissonance between who I had been and who I was slowly becoming. Nothing dramatic happened. No collapse, no revelation, just a subtle tremor, the way a room shifts when someone you love silently leaves it. You notice the absence before you understand what's missing. For me, it began with small things. A place I used to cherish suddenly felt hollow, conversations I once clung to dissolved into noise, and the version of myself I had tried so hard to maintain felt like an actor repeating lines from a script written by someone else. I would look at old photos and feel a soft ache, not because I missed those days, but because I could no longer find myself inside them. It was as if I had been present in body but absent in essence, alive but not fully awake. At first, I thought something was wrong with me. I wondered why the life I had built no longer tasted the same, why the people I loved felt far away even when they stood beside me. But the deeper I looked, the more I realized this wasn't madness. It was clarity breaking through the cracks. When consciousness expands, it gently pulls apart the layers that once protected you. The identity you crafted, out of fear, expectation, or habit, starts to dissolve. And while the unraveling feels like loss, it is really space being made. Space for the self you silenced. Space for the truth you postponed. Space for a kind of presence that doesn't need to be performed. If you feel this rift inside yourself, don't rush to fix it. Sit with it, the way you would sit beside a friend who is grieving a past they've outgrown. This discomfort is not a sign that you're broken. It is a sign that you're finally listening. You're not losing your life. You're shedding the one that was never truly yours. There comes a moment when your memories begin to feel strangely distant, almost as if they belong to someone you once knew but never fully were. I remember sitting with this feeling, unsure what to call it. It wasn't regret, and it wasn't nostalgia. It was something quieter, a sense that I had been walking through my own life as a visitor, touching everything but never truly inhabiting it. Like watching an old film where the scenes are familiar, the soundtrack recognizable, yet the main character feels foreign. You see your face, your gestures, your smile. But something essential is missing behind the eyes. For a long time, I tried to force myself to reconnect with those memories, to convince myself that they were mine. But the more I tried to step back into those old versions of me, the more I felt the subtle resistance of truth. I wasn't rejecting my past. I was simply recognizing that I had never fully lived it. Much of it had been shaped by fear. Fear of disappointing others, fear of being misunderstood, fear of stepping outside the boundaries that made other people comfortable. And life lived under fear leaves only half-formed memories, hollowed by absence. When consciousness deepens, it turns its light backward, and suddenly you see the places where you were performing instead of being. You see where you agreed to things your heart never wanted, where you stayed silent to keep the peace, where you carried a version of yourself built from expectations rather than authenticity. This realization can feel like betrayal, as if you're abandoning your former self. But look closer. What you're leaving behind is not you, it's the mask you were taught to wear. And here is the part many people never speak of. This recognition hurts. It creates a soft grief, not for what happened, but for the moments when you weren't truly there. Yet that grief is sacred. It means you're returning to yourself. If your memories feel borrowed, don't be alarmed. You're not fading, you're arriving. The life you lived half asleep is making room for the life you will live fully awake. There comes a point in this quiet unraveling when something inside you begins to stir, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the steady insistence of truth returning to its rightful place. It feels like a soft pulse beneath the noise of your everyday life, a presence you had forgotten was yours. This is the early tremor of identity awakening, when the self you buried for years finally begins to breathe again. For me, it began as discomfort. Not the kind that screams, but the kind that whispers in the spaces where you once felt certain. I remember waking up one morning and realizing that the goals I had chased so fiercely now felt strangely weightless. The praise I once depended on no longer reached me. Even my own ambitions seemed to drift away. as if the person who created them had quietly stepped out of the room. At first, I resisted. I tried to revive old desires, to rehearse old motivations, to talk myself into wanting what I had always wanted. But every attempt felt like wearing clothes a size too small, tight, restrictive, misaligned. The more I clung to the old self, the more it slipped from my grasp, dissolving like fog in sunlight. That's when I understood. The pain wasn't in losing who I had been. The pain was in pretending I still was that person. When the authentic self begins to rise, it does so gently but relentlessly. It questions what you've accepted. It challenges what you've normalized. It refuses to let you settle for a life built from compliance. And this shift can feel almost unbearable because the old self, tired as it may be, was familiar. It offered structure, even if that structure kept you small. But the emerging self is different. It is quieter yet far more powerful. It does not push, it reveals. It does not demand, it remembers. It invites you to step into a way of living where your choices are not shaped by fear or expectation, but by alignment. If you feel this rising within you, this subtle rebellion, this inner reshaping, know this: you are not unraveling, you are returning. Everything that feels like loss is simply the shedding of what was never truly you. There is a quiet threshold you cross right after the old version of you dissolves, a space that feels like both an ending and a beginning, yet belongs fully to neither. It feels unsettling at first, almost like standing in a room where the furniture has been cleared out. You know something has changed, but you're not yet sure what will take its place. This is the moment when your real life begins, not with a triumphant breakthrough, but with an unfamiliar stillness. I remember entering that space with equal parts fear and relief. Without the old identity to lean on, I felt exposed, as if I were walking without armor for the first time. There was no script to follow, no clear direction to run toward. And strangely, that absence, once terrifying, began to feel like permission. Permission to breathe, permission to question, permission to exist without performing. This transition often feels like being suspended between worlds. The old life no longer calls your name, yet the new one has not revealed its shape. You might wake up feeling both lighter and lost, both free and unsettled. But if you listen closely, beneath the confusion there is a deeper rhythm taking form. A sense that something in you is reorienting, aligning, preparing. Real life doesn't begin when everything makes sense. It begins when you stop forcing yourself to return to what no longer resonates. In this in-between, your senses sharpen. You speak more slowly, not out of caution, but because your words now pull from deeper places. You choose relationships not for comfort, but for truth. You no longer chase experiences for validation. Instead, you notice the quiet fullness behind ordinary moments. Sunlight on the floor, the sound of your own breath, a clarity that wasn't available before. It's easy to mistake this phase for loneliness, but look closer. What you're feeling is spaciousness, a kind of inner room finally freed from clutter, a clearing made for the self you are becoming. If you find yourself here, unanchored, uncertain, quietly transformed, trust it. Life is not collapsing, it is rearranging. Your real path does not appear when you cling to who you were. It appears the moment you dare to stay with who you are now. There comes a stage in this inner shift where your need for answers begins to loosen, almost without your permission. You stop trying to force meaning into every feeling, every memory, every moment of uncertainty. Instead, you begin to sense that not everything is meant to be solved. Some experiences arrive simply to open you, not to be organized into tidy explanations. I remember reaching this point and feeling a strange softening inside me, the kind that comes when you finally stop wrestling with life long enough to hear what it has been whispering all along. For years, I believed clarity meant control. I chased insights as if they were keys that could unlock every locked door within me. But awakening doesn't sharpen the mind the way I once imagined. It deepens it. It teaches you to sit with what once terrified you. The unanswered question, the unresolved emotion, the unfamiliar direction your life is taking. And slowly, the urge to fix yourself begins to dissolve. Instead of demanding certainty, you start noticing subtler things. The way your breath steadies when you stop resisting. The way truth feels more like a gentle nudge than a dramatic revelation. The way silence begins to comfort you in places where noise once filled your fears. When your consciousness matures, it no longer seeks to dominate experience. It seeks to understand it. You begin to see that not every pain needs a reason, not every wound needs a story, and not every departure needs to be justified. Some things fall away because your soul quietly outgrew them, and the mind is only now catching up. People around you might say you've become withdrawn or distant, but inside, you know you're not retreating. You're refining. You're learning the difference between reacting and seeing, between forcing and allowing. You're beginning to trust the intelligence of your inner landscape, even when it doesn't speak in full sentences. And here is the quiet truth. You don't need answers to move forward. You only need presence. If you feel yourself softening into uncertainty, don't mistake it for weakness. This is how awakening begins, not with conclusions, but with a deeper willingness to live inside the question. There is a subtle turning point in this inner journey when intuition, long buried beneath noise, fear, and habit, begins to rise again. Not dramatically, not with flashes of revelation, but with the quiet confidence of something ancient returning home. It feels almost like a memory awakening inside you, a way of knowing that existed before you learned to second-guess yourself. I remember the first time I noticed this shift. It wasn't a voice, not in the way people imagine. It was more like a soft rearranging within me, an inner alignment that made certain choices feel impossibly heavy, and others strangely effortless. I could sense when a conversation wasn't honest even if the words were polite. I could feel the wrongness of a path long before anything visibly fell apart. And when I tried to ignore these signals, they didn't punish me. They simply kept repeating themselves patiently until I listened. Intuition doesn't return as a command. It returns as clarity, not the sharp clarity of the mind, but the quiet clarity of the soul. When this awakening begins, you may find yourself withdrawing from situations you once tolerated without ever being able to explain why. People might ask, "What happened?" And you won't have a story to give them. The truth is, nothing happened. Your awareness simply expanded, and anything misaligned now feels impossible to inhabit. This can feel disorienting at first. You'll question whether you're being too sensitive, too selective, too distant. But sensitivity is just perception without distortion. And selectiveness is what happens when your inner world becomes too real to betray for the sake of fitting in. Over time, you'll begin to sense that intuition isn't something you develop. It's something you stop ignoring. It speaks in the heaviness in your chest, in the tightness in your breath, in the sudden calm that washes over you when something is right. It whispers through energy, tone, silence, and the faint tremors of truth that move beneath the surface of things. If your intuition is resurfacing, don't dismiss it as imagination. Imagination creates worlds. Intuition reveals them. And what it's revealing now is the life that matches the deeper rhythm of your being. You're not becoming irrational. You're becoming aligned. There comes a moment in this unfolding when you can no longer pretend to be the person you once presented to the world. The roles, the masks, the practiced smiles, they start to feel strangely heavy, as if you're carrying the weight of someone else's expectations rather than the gravity of your own truth. This is the stage where choosing yourself stops being a poetic idea and becomes an unavoidable necessity. I remember the quiet rebellion that rose inside me, not loud, not defiant, but steady. I found myself saying no to things I once agreed to automatically, not out of anger, but out of honesty. I pulled away from conversations that drained me, even when politeness urged me to stay. I no longer rushed to prove my worth in rooms where I felt unseen. And though I didn't fully understand it then, I was beginning to choose presence over performance. This is often when people accuse you of changing. But the deeper truth is that you're finally stopping the act of being who you never were. The old identity, built from survival, shaped by fear, refined for acceptance, starts to crumble. And in its place emerges a softer, more grounded version of you. Not a better self, just a truer one. Choosing yourself isn't a grand act. It's a series of quiet decisions. To rest when your body whispers, to leave when your spirit tightens, to speak when silence would wound you, to stay truthful even when it costs you approval. These choices can feel like losses. You might feel the sting of walking away from relationships where you once shrank yourself to fit. You might mourn the comfort of belonging to spaces that now feel too narrow. And you might grieve the version of you who once tolerated everything to avoid being alone. But look closely. This grief is a cleansing. It's the soul reclaiming its shape. As you choose yourself, life begins to reorder itself around you. People who resonate with your truth draw nearer. Those who relied on your silence drift away. What remains, what persists, is real. If you feel this shift, don't mistake it for selfishness. It is self-returning. Choosing yourself is not an act of abandonment. It is the first time you stop abandoning you. There is a final, quiet crossing on this path. A moment when you realize you can no longer return to the person you were, even if you tried. Not because the past was unworthy, but because the self you have become can no longer fit inside the old outline. This is where real life begins. Not with triumph, but with an irreversible softening, an inward shift that settles into your bones. I remember sensing this threshold like a faint click inside my chest, as if something that had been misaligned for years finally slid into place. There was no celebration, no bright revelation, just a clarity so gentle it almost felt like silence resting in the heart. I understood then that awakening isn't an escape from life, it's a deeper arrival into it. In this stage, loneliness transforms into solitude. What once felt like emptiness becomes spaciousness, a kind of inner room cleared of the clutter you carried for years without noticing its weight. You begin to see that losing people, plans, and identities was not destruction, but pruning. Life removing what you outgrew so that something more truthful could take root. You speak differently now, not louder, not stronger, just truer. Your boundaries sharpen not from hardness, but from clarity. You no longer chase belonging, yet you belong to yourself more deeply than ever. You stop trying to find your path, because you finally realize the path was always emerging from within you. Others may not understand this shift. They may think you've pulled away, become distant, become someone else. But the truth is simpler. You've stopped abandoning yourself to stay accessible to others. And the world, in its own time, rearranges around this new center you've grown into. This phase is not a destination, it's an invitation. An invitation to live from presence rather than memory, from alignment rather than obligation, from awareness rather than fear. You're no longer guided by who you were, but by who you are quietly becoming. If you feel this steady calm, this sense that something in you has settled beyond the reach of old wounds, trust it. You are not drifting. You are anchoring. And your real life, the one that finally matches the rhythm of your soul, is only just beginning.